I am beyond excited for this conversation. I am beyond excited. It has been a long time in the making. I have the absolute pleasure to have on my good friend, Dr. Cody Crockett. He is a doctor of physical therapy, an executive health coach, and a PT for the US ski and snowboard team. He does so many wonderful things, but the thing that he's really focused on right now is helping professionals achieve elite health and performance. Cody, welcome. It is so good to have you here.
Samantha, thank you. So excited when you invited me for this conversation. I knew it's going to be a great one, and there's so many different avenues that we'll get into with health, performance, all the holistic aspects. So I'm really excited to be here. Thank you, and yeah, steer the ship. Let's see where we're going to go here.
Let us do that. And I just want to rewind a second because to give some context, I remember when I first met you in person, back in the day, paleo effects, pre-pandemic, this must have been like 2018, 2019. I remember seeing you and meeting you and just being taken aback. Like you're somebody that has such a huge presence and such a massive energy. And I remember thinking to myself, now that's a man. This is a man, like I think you might have been wearing a cowboy hat or maybe something primal on. Maybe it's yeah, I think there was some primal outfit going on, and you're just so ripped and then kind and articulate and so knowledgeable. I remember just being captivated and thinking, okay, this is somebody that I need to know. And I'm so glad that I got to know you because not just being your friend, but also being a client of yours, right? Coming to you for some personal therapy work and then further with some feminine health work and just getting to pick your brain and be on the receiving end of your wisdom has been such a joy. And so I'm really excited to be able to just take out as much as possible and bring that to my community, to my clients, to my network, to my friends, to my partner, because you're just such a wealth of knowledge. So again, had to praise you and just be so in awe of you and everything that you are.
Well, thank you. You would see me blushing, but the red light in the background masks it. But I really appreciate that. And I do recall, yeah, Paleo Effects meeting you there for the first time in person and feeling your energy, radiant, feminine, but also I could tell that you're a killer. You're a boss babe and you get after it. So it's really cool to see that dynamic in you as I've gotten to know you, how you can lean into the feminine, but also the masculine and can actually, support people, support women and men at that capacity. So thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely. And it is that it's about bridging those energies. It's about stepping into this new level of power. I love that you said, I think you're a killer, that killer instinct. And it's just about being somebody that's passionate about going above and beyond, especially above and beyond what we're fed in society, what we're taught in medicine, and what we're taught in school, what we're not taught, how so many people are just stuck in mediocrity because it's been conditioned to them. People are sick, stressed, diseased, depressed. Almost nobody knows about their bodies, how to optimize their bodies, about their minds, about the tools that are out there. And so having these kind of conversations and being on the forefront of that and trailblazing in that way, it's just so important. So with that being said, I want to dive right in and start by asking, what does peak performance even mean to you? Like this is something that you're all about, elite health, peak performance. So how would you define peak performance?
Great question. And peak performance, it's, being able to show up in your optimal way, fulfilling your maximum potential. That's mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever the situation calls for, is to show up at your highest form. So it does depend on the context of if that's showing up for peak performance and giving a speech or giving a presentation or as a professional athlete, or whether it's just showing up in your relationship and having a difficult conversation. So this is where we get into the concept of holistic health and health being holistic in that when you optimize your mental health, your physical health, your emotional health, this helps you in all aspects of your life. So whether that is relationships, your business, whether that's in your own health or your own life goals, optimizing your health is going to help you to get there. So when it comes to peak performance, it's optimizing all aspects of your health so that you can perform at your highest level, whatever that means for you.
I agree wholeheartedly. And I love that you brought it there. And it really is that macrocosm, right? The all the different aspects of our lives, they're not compartmentalized. They're an ecosystem that plays upon itself. And I think more and more people are realizing this, and maybe especially women for the past many years. But I think I'm seeing it that men are realizing this more and more and starting to see the different aspects of their lives and how they play a role on each other and how they affect each other. And I'm curious for you because I know you work with a lot of high performers. I mean, you work with the US team. How do you see that playing out in the men that you work with? Do you see that they really grasp this concept of holistic health? Is it growing? Is there an awakening or is it still lacking? Like, if you could give us a perspective on these high performers and kind of how they're relating to holistic health and high performance, what would you say about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that it is becoming more, there's more awareness around this concept of how do we address holistic health, address health holistically. And I think that's being seen now more as we see what's been going on with the medical industry, healthcare, and how, without going too far down that direction, how people are now seeing that we have to take responsibility for our own health and how it is on you to decide what you're going to put in your body, how you're going to move your body when you decide you're going to go to sleep. And especially at the higher levels of peak performance when you're, say, as a professional athlete. And when I do work with the ski team, it's, you would be very surprised how many of them are even missing the foundations of,
Mm.
health and just aligning our physiology and our biology with what is most aligned with our primal human nature. And there's ways that you can kind of push through that and just be skilled or talented and be able to mask some of those deficiencies. But at the highest level, when you are around other people that are at their highest capacity, if you're not dialed in with one aspect of your health, that's going to show. And so it is becoming more prevalent and it becoming more common for the guys that I work with at the highest level, and the men and the women, to see how when they notice, like I had one specifically, he had mentioned, he said, man, if I don't get enough sleep, if I don't go to bed by this time, I wake up the next day and I can't walk because my legs need this amount of recovery. And so realizing that when you are performing at that high level and you're really giving everything that you have and you're riding that edge, if you're lacking in your sleep department, or if you're lacking in your nutrition or in your movement and you're not doing the right things movement wise, or you're misaligned, or you're not breathing, well, that's when the whole machine falls apart, or it just doesn't operate at the highest level. And to take it just a step further, realizing how important the foundational aspects of our health are. So, really looking at what are the biggest problems that society suffers with, high performers, but also everyday people. We're suffering with depression, disease, distress. We're suffering from all of these issues that, the way that I see it, are a result of over domestication, where we become so disconnected from our true human nature to the point where our bodies are falling apart, our minds are disconnected. And we can see that in so many different ways if we look at society as a whole. But by operating from a place of mastering the foundation, the fundamentals, and taking that to the higher levels of peak performance, that's where we have to have a foundation to build from. And then we can use some of the strategies like the biohacks, the tools, some of the things that you talk about to get to the next level. So I know that was a long-winded question, but it is something that is becoming more commonly accepted, and people are realizing that they have to take responsibility for their health into their own hands if they actually want to be healthy in this world that's actually poisoning us.
100%. There's so many things I wanna say about what you just said, but my mind went into, like a pyramid in my mind, and I thought about the base as it's a hierarchy, the base being the fundamentals, the foundations. But a lot of people don't wanna do those things. They wanna skip to the pills and the biohacks and, the ways that we can just surpass that and have the quick, easy fix. And you see this in aesthetics as well. You see this in just regular, but definitely in the high performers. Well, it's easier to get a surgery or take a steroid or pop a pill than it is to be disciplined to drink your water, take your minerals, eat enough food, eat at home, sleep well, avoid some of the toxins, not drink alcohol. Like, it's harder and it takes discipline and dedication. And so that in that quick fix world, I love what you're saying about, well, it's not really that. You can, maybe if you have some natural skill, you can take some of those quick fixes and get somewhere, but to truly be at the peak, you have to have that hierarchy. And this is something that as I'm listening to you, there's also like a personal just pain in my heart because I think I was so athletic as a kid. I was so athletic. I've been 6 feet tall since I was 12, and I had such a huge advantage. But my diet was so terrible. I only started drinking water, Cody, when I was 21 years old, the first time ever drinking water. People that know me know that this is true. I didn't eat vegetables until my 20s. I had such a poor diet, very standard American diet. I was so picky. I just didn't care. I did not sleep well. I didn't do any of the foundations and I suffered. I was an okay athlete because I'm strong and taller than all the other girls. And I'm naturally gifted in athleticism, but nowhere great. And it was because I suffered and struggled so much in those foundations. And I just think, imagine if I would have known that back then. Like, where could I have been? And so, yeah, it's sad that that this knowledge, it's kind of still, I mean, it's growing, but it still kind of is suppressed where a lot of people just don't know these basic things of how the body works. But I'm curious because, you talked about peak performance very holistically. If we dial in and focus on fully on, say, like physical peak performance, I would love for you to paint a picture of what is both a woman and a man, you can say it's together separately. What does a peak performance woman or man look like and feel like? Like, I want you to paint the picture of the optimal human. What would you say that is?
Great question. If we just break it down into a human, so if we just look at a fully optimized human, one is going to be looking at the bucket of the physical health, right? So if we're looking at that physicality, we want to begin with how we stand, how you present yourself, which is your posture, your alignment, how you have your body structures structured and aligned. When I see somebody that's operating from peak performance, it all begins with the presence. Like you mentioned back to Paleo FX. And yeah, I may have had a cutoff t-shirt on at that time, if I remember, but showing up, I'm sure I was standing up tall. I was breathing, I was grounded and projecting a level of confidence. So if you see somebody physically, how are they structuring their body? How are they standing? Because that is a direct reflection on how they believe and how they internalize themselves, plus the work that they put in to physically, optimize their alignment so that they can perform. Because it begins with that first, that posture, that alignment, that presence. Then it's the breathing. So is this a person that is breathing deep into their belly? For the men, I teach them to breathe into their balls, not just because it's catchy, because it is literally you want to breathe deep into your belly, into your pelvic floor. And that does connect to your testicles. So to get a man grounded, breathing deep is so important. So in order to do that, we have to have our structures aligned. So if your body's aligned and it's stacked, you have your diaphragm and you have your pelvic floor. And those things need to work together for breathing. So
Mhm.
those are the first two aspects is how do you stand? How do you breathe? How do you speak and project yourself? So
Mhm.
those are some of the key things that I look at first off when it comes to recognizing a man or a woman that is operating from peak performance. That's the first indicator. And that can be before they even speak a word because your presence, who you are, your physicality says so much more about you than exactly the words that come out of your mouth. If I see somebody that looks well, presents themselves well, tells me that they have a level of confidence, discipline, and respect. So those are key indicators that I can see. And I'll pause there because we can take it a little further.
I wanna, yeah, okay, so I love that, and who would have thought that Cody would say that, right? You would probably think, like, body mass or hormones, but just talking about the physical structure, or, like, anatomical structure, our posture, that's something that most people don't talk about, but it is the bones. That's that's the structure, and I'll take it on a psychological route for a second. My background's in psychology, I've been studying it since I was 15, and I can tell immediately by looking at somebody, especially women, how they feel about themselves, right? Look at their shoulders. If their shoulders are up and elevated, normally they're anxious or afraid. If they're curled over, they're protecting themselves. If they're slouched, normally it's low self-worth or they're apathetic, right? Like cross the legs when women are standing with their legs crossed. They're hiding, protective. You can see when people stand confidently. You can even see if somebody's a bit narcissistic, the way that they stand or their facial features or the way that they penetrate reality. You can tell so much, even if you're standing in a group and see where all of the feet are faced towards. You can see who's the more dominant person. Our bodies tell so much. We know body language, but I find it so cool to play that game of like almost observing somebody and guessing. I wonder, this is probably how they're going to be. And then you start to interact and you're like, yeah, that's how I thought they would be. So we tell so much about that. I wanna jump into there for a sec. Okay, so if that's the first determinant of health, well, how do we make sure that we're on point with that?
The problem that so many people face is that they wait until there's either pain or they're not able to do something.
Mm.
So many people are on waiting on their backside of their heels, waiting for a problem to get to the point where they actually have to do something about it.
Well, I'm gonna jump in there for a sec because
Yeah.
what you just said really hit me of it, you wait until there's pain. For me, I always had postural issues ever since I was young. Like I said, I was this height since I was 12, and that's a lot taller than most girls. So I would hunch over, especially just like because I didn't even think about it, but just to be everyone else's height. So you can see in pictures, I'd be slouched over. And I grew up extremely inflexible. I remember my best friend, she could do the splits, she could do all this stuff. I couldn't even open my legs more than, 60 degrees. And that's just anatomically my structure, my pelvis. Maybe there's reasons there, maybe connected to trauma, probably. But this was just how it had always been, and it was only into my 30s where I realized, "Oh, my neck is quite protruded. Oh, I'm constantly getting this pain in my shoulders. Oh, I'm noticing one of my legs is a little shorter. It's actually because my hip is elevated and rotated. I can't bend." I remember going to Pilates or yoga and being like, "Wow, I am not like the other women." And it really took this self-awareness to realize, "Oh, okay, there's some issues here structurally that have been there since I was a child, but I never really paid too much attention until being more aware." And so, that's another reason why you and I have chatted recently, just been like, "Okay, I realize there are some imbalances here." And so if somebody's like me and they realize, "Okay, there are some imbalances and I'm noticing I'm getting a lot of pain and I maybe have some restricted movement," what would you say, where do they start with starting to correct some of those imbalances? Because that is one of the foundations of health.
So many people will wait until they experience a problem like that. And there may be hints of it when, you're in your teens, you're in your 20s, maybe in your 30s. That's when the things start to come up. And so if you have something that nags, or if you notice that you being over 6 foot, so like you probably grew very tall in a short period of time. And so there may be mobility issues when it comes to the hips. There may be mobility issues when it comes to certain soft tissues that haven't had time to catch up. So for a lot of people, instead of waiting until they have a problem that pops up and then they go to their primary care provider who prescribes pills, procedures, and that's their primary modality, that might bring a little bit of awareness to what the problem is and how to fix it. But this is where so many of us and so many of your listeners, they're the more the type that are going to be interested in health and taking responsibility into what are the things that you can do. And that's where having the awareness and educating yourself so that you can either, one, you take things into your own hands, or you seek somebody out, kind of like you did, where you were looking for somebody that knows, more of what your values are when it comes to health, can identify your problems more from a holistic perspective. And then you can get into more of the nuances of, okay, well, my back hurts, or I have this hip or this pelvic issue. Instead of directly addressing that, we look at what are all of these systems that are connected to this. And the breathing is a big part of that. And so if somebody, and so many people are locked up with their breathing where they don't even realize it. They may have, neck pain, shoulder pain, or like you mentioned, the forward head posture, but they quite haven't connected the dots that this is either affected by their breathing or it is affecting their breathing. And that's a whole nother deep dive that we could go into. But that's where, instead of waiting until there is a problem that arises, if there's signs, I mean, if we're being real, all of us, we can recognize if we're feeling off. Even if you're in kind of a funk for a couple weeks, a couple months, instead of just taking that as, oh, well, it must be this, it must be that, it's like do the deeper dive and actually unpack it and see, what is this signal telling me? Because our body tells us these things ahead of time. Instead of waiting and just pushing it off until it becomes a roaring house fire, it's like, well, let's look at the spark and then we'll put it out. And that's where doing the deep dive into addressing the root causes is how I like to operate differently with the men and the women that I work with. Is let's look at the whole system as a whole, and then we can do a deep dive into what these issues are, and then how do they all work together, because the system is all integrated. Whether we talk about it from the primal level of connecting with nature, or whether we talk about the relationship of the head, the neck, the shoulders, the pelvis, the breathing, all of these are related. So recognize the signs, but also don't wait until there's issues that arise and that there's signs there. Be proactive, and by implementing some of these easy, low hanging fruit strategies, this is where you can just optimize the foundation, and then you can piggyback up, or you can have jump off points from there, whatever your biggest goals are. And then you optimize for that, whether it's even just getting down on the ground and playing with your kids. If you want to be able to get down and get up and play with them, that may be peak performance for some people. So
Mm.
it just depends on the person, but starting with your foundation and then building up from there based off your goals.
Mm. I really like that you said that, and it makes me think about something. There's a saying, I don't know if I made it up or if I heard it I'm sure many people say it. It's, "You don't know how bad you feel until you start feeling good," or, "You don't know how bad you felt until you start feeling good." And this really hit me with some of the clients I worked with over my life, where I remember a woman said, I just thought that when you eat, your stomach hurts because that's how it's always been my whole life, and I just thought that was normal, and when I started to talk to other people and realize that other people didn't have that, that's when I realized that it wasn't normal, and I thought, "Wow, yeah, that makes sense," or for me, I've always had these shoulder issues at the back and at my neck ever since I can remember, so it was not a thing for me, it was just that's how my body is. Other people are, "Well, I'm just always tight, I'm inflexible, that's just how my body is. I've always had anxiety, that's how my body is." But no, that's actually not how the body is meant to be, and so I think what's really interesting is when we bring the awareness that your body's actually not meant to hurt all the time. Any form of pain when it's chronic, even if it's these little nags, like you were saying, being aware of the little nags, that is your body whispering to you, and it will whisper at first, and then it will shout, and then it will scream, and then it will fully break down. And for most of us, we're really good at just shoving down those feelings, you know, whether it be with distractions or whether it be with literal like Tylenol or, ibuprofen or the kind of the prescribed medications, sometimes even more hardcore, which is a whole other thing. It's important for us to know that the body is actually supposed to pretty much feel good. It's supposed to work well. And when it starts to give you these little signs, don't wait. Start to look at like I love what you said, like look at the system as an entirety and identify the root of what this could be. And is it postural? Is it musculature? Is it breathing? And it's just so important to name because so many people are just used to feeling bad that is their normal. And although that's what's common, or normal for you, it's actually not what's normal for the body when it's functioning well, and there's so much more that's possible for you.
Yeah, and I love everything that you said there. And another example of that is acid reflux. So many people are told that they have, oh, I feel this burning after I eat. That just must be what happens after I eat. I must, take this medication to now inhibit that.
Yeah.
When I had a perfect example of a patient that's been experiencing and she's young. I mean, she's in her early 40s, and she's been experiencing acid reflux for 15 years. And she's had two doctors say, okay, we'll go in, we'll do a release, and we'll correct this, and just this procedure, easy. So she's had two surgeons try to do this operation, very much against getting the surgery, she is. And so she opted not to. And she's a whole host of other issues with, shoulder, brain injury. But this acid reflux prevented her from being able to eat and to actually gain weight. So
Mm.
they're prescribing her medications for the acid.
Proton pump inhibitors and
Mhm.
yeah,
Yep.
the
And then,
medications and all the antacids probably too,
yeah,
isn't it one of the top 5 most consumed over the counter, maybe even the top 3 are antacids?
it would be, yeah,
So
some of
many
the top for
Americans
sure.
struggle with that, and I went down this rabbit hole as well because I had a few clients that had this high acidity prescribed proton pump inhibitors. And this is something that I studied in school when I went for naturopathy and natural medicine and whatnot. And realizing that, oftentimes it's low stomach acid that is showing as high stomach acid, or it's connected to stress because of the suppression of our digestive acids and our gastric juices, or oftentimes it's H. pylori. It's an infection in the esophagus that is going undetected because mainstream medicine doesn't test for these right things. They don't have the right tools. And yet people are just hyper prescribed these surgeries or these drugs, and it doesn't really make them better. That's the other thing. And then it leads to a cascade of other health issues and comorbidities as well.
Exactly, and it's fortunately, this patient that I'm speaking, she didn't get the medication, so she just decided to deal with it. Well, I realized that her breathing was so far off, and that was part of the neck and the shoulder issue. Well, once we corrected the breathing and she learned how to breathe deep, went completely away. No longer has acid reflux. Told one of the surgeons, and they said, "Oh, that can't happen. That's not
It's
what
not
caused."
possible, but
She
I
100%.
love that. There's so many things that I have done or I have seen with my clients, even like healing my vision. This is such a controversial thing. I needed glasses for a few years after the hardest time in my life. I healed, I changed my diet, I changed everything. I no longer needed glasses, thus I healed my vision. And people will tell you that is not possible. I'm like, but I literally did it and I've helped many other people do it. They're like, well, that can't be. I'm like, okay, I get that it can't be, but it is. And it's so funny, this paradigm of it is not possible because this is not what we learned. Well, unfortunately, your paradigm is incomplete. And so it's so funny, but to your point of the breathing, so I'm wondering, like, mechanically, do you think that she was maybe stuck in fight or flight and then breathing opened up and helped her calm into her parasympathetic nervous system? Or do you think it was like, what do you think the mechanism there? Why did changing the breathing help her digestion?
Great question, and her situation is very complex. So,
Mhm.
significant brain injury about 10 years ago, and that had her locked up in fight or flight. So, shoulder was up, head was kinda twisted to the side. When we first started to open up her shoulder, she had a lot of emotional issues at that point that came up that she wasn't expecting, because now she's in a better position. Her body was so guarded that opened it up, so now energy can move, and she was able to actually breathe deep. So at that point, her nervous system started to downregulate. So you have that neurological aspect of downregulation from the breathing and how we can use the breath to tap into more of a deeper neurological, be able to access our nervous system on a deeper level with the breath. So there's that component. But then there's also that physical mechanical structure component. And if you consider the diaphragm, so we have our abdominal diaphragm at the top, and your esophagus needs to pass through that diaphragm. So it literally passes through a hole in the diaphragm. And if somebody is constantly chest breathing or through their neck, through their shoulders, their chest, the diaphragm is never actually going down. So
Mm.
it gets stuck up, and that gets stuck and it gets shortened, and that ends up pinching off the esophagus. So mechanically, when she started to breathe deep, we got more extensibility and more movement of her diaphragm that then allowed her esophagus to open up where that junction was. So there's that aspect, but not only did it change the acid reflux, but it also decreased her back pain, and it helped to realign her pelvis too, because as we talked a couple weeks ago, the connection between the pelvic floor and how that has the fibers that go up the front of the spine and connect to the diaphragm, all of this is intertwined and connected. So by changing your breathing, yeah, it can change your digestive system, your nervous system, but it can also change down into more of your reproductive system, into your pelvis, any, urinary system. If you have difficulty with releasing your bowels, there's things that you can do for breathing techniques that are going to help to move this whole system. So I appreciate the question, because it is, yeah, the neurological component. You have the muscular skeletal component, and her situation was complex, but to see just the effects that breathing had in multiple different systems was pretty astonishing. And then to have a primary care provider for her tell her that it's all in her head when already has problems with,
Yeah.
previous brain
Oh, the
injuries. Like that's
gaslighting, the gaslighting.
exactly.
Okay,
Hmm.
so I wanna talk about this breath a little bit. I wanna talk about the pelvic floor, and then we're gonna kinda circle back. So, with the breath, this is something that I learned in my mid-20s, again, when I was learning to be a nutritional practitioner. I realized, I was like, "Wow, I was 25 at the time," and I'm like, "Okay, I have not breathed properly probably since I was a baby." It's such a weird concept to realize that the main things that we do, like breathing, walking, these fundamental things that we don't do properly. Because I also didn't walk properly. I know we talked about this, I was pulling with my hips rather moving with the right mechanisms. But when I learned that I wasn't breathing properly, and I'm somebody that went through an immense amount of trauma growing up, a lot of stress, like very tumultuous many years, my breath was very, very shallow and in the chest with my mouth. Right? Shoulders closed, always cold. I had some thyroid issues, so always cold, closed off, very, very shallow in the chest. And when I started to learn about a diaphragm, which I had never learned about, and how it's meant to move down and open, and I was blown away. I thought, wow, why don't we ever learn this? And it made such a difference. I also then learned that when we're breathing into our chest and our shoulders are raising, it sends the signal to our brain that we are in fight or flight, that we are in danger. So it actually, the way that we breathe creates more stress in the body. It tells our body that we're not safe. And so that is also so mind blowing how something as simple yet fundamental and so misdone and misunderstood as breathing can make such a big difference. So I'm wondering for the people listening, how can you let's check in with them. I want them to do a couple of breaths for you listening. I'm going to have you do a couple of breaths, but first, I'm going to have Cody help you understand if you're breathing in the not so beneficial way and then shift into the very beneficial way. So, Cody, tell us, what is the improper way to breathe?
Right. So the improper way to breathe is just like you said, breathing in just whether it's through the mouth, through the nose, in through the neck, the chest, the shoulders, and just very shallow breathing. And when we breathe shallow, it tends to be a more faster paced, tempoed breathing. So you're not actually getting the breath down past the chest into the lungs where the breath needs to be. And if we're locked up in the neck, the chest, and the shoulders, like you said, that causes the nervous system to drive us up into more fight or flight. Then if we look at what proper breathing is, so if we look at,
Before we go into proper breathing for a sec, could you show me, for anyone watching this, could you show me what improper breathing might look like?
yeah, improper breathing, and it's can be tough to notice too because it just looks like a person may not be breathing. So improper breathing though would be more of in through the or
Your neck
neck,
is swelling up a bit, your shoulders are raising, your chest is puffing out. You look a little stressed in your face, like there's tension.
stress. I
Yeah,
start to feel stressed. Yeah.
yeah.
So it's yeah, it's so you'll see more of the neck muscles tense up. You'll see that the shoulders may not come down, they may be stuck up. And you'll notice this in people that they're chronically breathing through the chest and the neck is they'll have a hard time even releasing their shoulders down or bringing their shoulders back. So that they'll have a hard time even achieving good posture because of how locked up they are through the neck and the upper thoracic region.
Okay, this is so good. So, for those of you listening or watching, take 2 breaths, just normal, and start to notice. Where do you feel it in your body? Are you noticing the tension in your jaw or your shoulders? Does it feel like your diaphragm is moving? And actually, maybe you don't know where your diaphragm is. Cody, share with us. Where is the diaphragm? What is the diaphragm?
So the diaphragm, so we'll keep it simple. So the diaphragm is right under the rib cage. So that's the liner, that's the barrier between your abdominal cavity and where your rib cage is. So if you grab onto bottom part of your rib cage, and you take a deep breath in, you should feel that muscle below your rib cage bulge out. So you should seem like you're getting a nice big Buddha belly if you're doing it the right way. And a good exercise, a good way that you can practice good breathing mechanics here and to start to feel in your body where the breath is going is to put one hand on your chest and one hand over your belly button. And then just taking in a couple deep breaths. And as you notice your breathing, as it comes in, do you feel your hand on your chest raise and fall? Or do you feel your hand over your belly button raise and fall? So if you're breathing deep into your belly, diaphragmatically, you should feel that hand on your belly button raise up, rise. So this would be an indicator that I'll use a lot of time in the clinic or with my clients where we'll just put one hand on the chest, one hand on the belly, and just start to breathe and notice what you're doing. Now,
Mm,
if we want to take it a step further and actually practice the good belly breathing, think of this as a good visualization. So if you imagine a pitcher of water, and you're going to take that pitcher of water and you're going to pour it into a glass. You're going to fill up that bottom part of the glass first. And as you continue to pour the water into the glass, it's going to then fill up more of the middle part of the glass. And then as you finish it off, you're going to fill up more of the top part of the glass. So we can imagine our breath filling up our lungs the same way. As we're breathing
mm.
in, we breathe deep into the belly, and that's going to fill up the bottom parts of the lungs first. As we continue to breathe in, you're going to notice the middle part of the lungs and then more of the chest, the upper part of the lungs. And we don't want to try to over breathe and overpack too much air to the point where we have our lungs already full and we're trying to force more air in, because that will end up in the shoulders and the chest becoming overactivated. And if that becomes overactivated, then we're putting our body back into fight or flight.
This is funny. I am not super pro breath work for everybody. I don't think it's the best thing ever. I think it can be so beneficial, but I've been in many circles, in the back in my spiritual community days and had some very intense breathwork practitioners that were breath of firing and Wim Hofing. And I remember feeling horrendous afterwards because there was no one-on-one support. This was before I really knew. And it was just force feeding this breath and hyperventilating almost. One guy passed right out. He fainted. And I felt horrible for the rest of the day. I was so stressed out because it sent me completely into my sympathetic nervous system. And I was just kind of strung out for the rest of the day. It was not beneficial for me at all. And I think, same as, cold plunging, there's a lot of trends. Some are good, some are bad. I think it depends on the context and the situation. But it's interesting that you mentioned that we do have to be mindful of how we're breathing, and especially with, a lot of these trendy ways to do things. Just because it's a trend doesn't mean it's a good thing for you.
Just because you open that up and you do that, it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that's a good thing and that's going to actually, actually fix a problem that may cause more problems. And something that you said there, so the breath, it's a two-way street, it's a two-way road. So how you sit and posture yourself, if you're sitting at a desk all day and you're breathing very shallow, your body is going to get locked into a stress response. So based off of your physiology and the postures and the movements that you do or don't do, your body is going to respond to that. You can also use your body, position it well, breathe intentionally, and that's a way you can then tap into your physiology. So you can use your posture and your physiology to guide your breathing, or you can use your breathing to guide and direct your physiology. So it's a tool. The breath, it's a really cool tool. And yeah, it's super hypey and people really, can get into it quite a bit. But it is very powerful in that if you are stuck in a stressful state, or if you're having a hard time, or if you're in, a spiral of thought loops, use the breath to then, in a way, hack your nervous system to stop that. And you can then stop your nervous system from being stuck in that. Because, like I said, the breathing can put you into a certain state, but a certain state will cause you to breathe a certain way.
Yes. And why is being in a certain nervous system state important? Because that is where we rest, we digest, we heal, we flow, we function properly. I think a huge amount of the chronic issues that we see today are because we're stuck in this fight or flight where we're hyper overstimulated and our body is flooding stress hormones nonstop. And your body's the greatest pharmacy, but you have to be aware of what chemicals you're flooding yourself with. I know we have about half an hour, 45 minutes. There's so many things I want to get into here, Cody. So I'm going to say one thing and then I'm going to ask you another question. And I feel like we should have booked this 5 hour. Let me know if for those of you listening in the comments, should we have booked a 5 hour? Because I would wanna just ask everything. Something that I noticed is for people that breathe really shallow or, you can look at somebody and realize that they probably haven't breathed in, like, hours, and they're just kinda holding there. What's fun is when you ask them to take a deep breath, you're gonna say, "Hey, take a deep breath." Most of the time, they'll yawn. They'll have this, like, huge yawn. Would you say that that's the body, like, just having a physiological shift into a down regulation of the nervous system?
Yeah, yeah, it could because if they're, yeah, so locked up to the point they haven't taken a breath, they probably need to exhale first before they even take a breath because they're just full of this stagnant air.
Oh,
But
so
yeah, our
that's interesting. So rather than getting them to fill more, it's like, "Hey, release your breath, release what you're holding to then open up more."
exactly. Yeah, because when we breathe in, there's a slight increase in heart rate, blood pressure goes up
Mhm.
slightly, and then when we exhale, it's the opposite where we get that
Mhm.
slight. So you think of the inhale and the exhale, it's like, the inhale is more sympathetic, the exhale is more parasympathetic.
Yeah.
Most people in the world that we live in are stuck in the sympathetic.
I love this. So rather than saying to somebody, "Hey, take a deep breath," maybe we need to say, "Hey, release your breath."
Oh,
I
that's
like
so
this.
relaxing.
Okay. Release your breath. Take it in slow. I love it. And something that you said, and I wanna talk about, especially because I know that I have, a lot of women that I work with in my program Optimum. This is something that we've talked about. I would not consider myself a specialist in the pelvic, floor, but I know that you are, and you have a really epic program that you have launched for men, and men are getting these amazing results. But I want you for my women. So I need to talk to you about pelvic health. Like, what is the pelvic floor for those of us listening? Why is it important? And what do we need to know about pelvic health? And let's start off with why is this important? Like, I'm talking about pelvic health, pelvic floor. What and why? Tell me, why do we need to know about the pelvic floor?
Let's talk about it. Let's get into it. Yeah. So, regardless of whether you're a male or a female, you have a pelvic floor. So, contrary to popular belief, some people believe men don't have pelvic floors. In fact, they do. Men and women do. And this is important for both genders, but it's also something that we have different issues and different focuses. So, if we just first talk about why the pelvic floor is important. So, if you consider your body at the base of your body, at the base of your pelvis, that is essentially your root. So, if you think of and yoga, it's your root chakra. If you think of the base of your pelvis, this is where all of your organs, all that force comes down and it sits on top of that. So the pelvic floor is essentially a muscular hammock. Think of it like that. It's this sheath, this layer of different muscles that support our reproductive organs, it supports our bladder, and it supports everything else that's on top of it weighing down.
Mm.
So, number one, that's the structure there. And it supports us because if, say, somebody has a weak pelvic floor, and generally women tend to have more of a weak pelvic floor, and men tend to have an overly tight pelvic floor. Both can be pathological, both can have issues. But in the case of, say, somebody that has a weak pelvic floor, and you hear about this with some women in the gym, is you may notice that if a woman is lifting very heavy, exerting themselves, and they have a weak pelvic floor, you may notice some dribbling or some slight leakage. And this is, you see it online in certain videos, reels and stuff. And that's a sign that that pelvic floor isn't able to support the organs, the bladder to the point where there's leakage because of that pelvic floor weakness. And if we consider your core, so our core isn't just your abs. And that's a very common misunderstanding is people think just because you have a six pack, you have a strong core. And that's not it. You consider your core is a system. And at the bottom of your core is your pelvic floor. At the top of your core is your diaphragm. And surrounding the sides, just like a cylinder, that's a muscle called the transverse abdominis. So it's this system that's very similar to a container like a soda can. And you need to, in order to have a strong, stable core and a system that you can pressurize that core, you need to have a strong pelvic floor. You need to have effective breathing. And then you need to have the ability to engage those muscles around your core. So without making this all about core strength, which very important, The pelvic floor is the base. It's the root of your core. And if that floor is weak, you'll experience the leakage. You'll experience, prolapse, potentially if you're a woman, uh, pelvic pain. Men, they'll experience more issues such as the premature ejaculation or erectile dysfunction. And those problems are a result of overly tight pelvic floor. That's the importance of the pelvic floor. It's different for men and women, but overall, in terms of performance, physical performance, whether you are a pro athlete, whether you want to be able to just lift and functionally be able to carry another person if you need to, or if you want to be able to perform in the bedroom, then it's pretty important stuff to be aware of your pelvic floor, your core, and your breathing.
Hmm. Okay, so we talked about breathing, how breathing affects the pelvic floor. What else? Like, what else do we need to be mindful of? People are listening, they're like, okay, I'm learning. Okay, I have a pelvic floor. Cool. I want it to be, like strong, but not too tight, not weak. I want it to be healthy. What are some of the foundations for having a healthy pelvic floor?
Right. So the first aspect of understanding the pelvic floor is how to control the muscles of your pelvic floor. Most of us are familiar with the Kegel, and the Kegel is a muscle. Well, it's the action of contracting the pelvic floor muscle. So if you imagine if you're, sitting on the toilet, you're urinating and you want to cut off the flow of urine midstream, then you squeeze and you contract those muscles, and that would be doing a Kegel. So if you do too many Kegels, it can cause an overly tight pelvic floor. But in order to first understand this muscle, just by contracting it and relaxing it teaches you where this muscle is and then how to control it. So that's base level number one. If you then want to extend a little further, you can do longer holds where you contract and you hold for a little longer. And there's then also different degrees of contraction. So you can contract very minimally, you can contract more of a medium range, and then more of a intensity, like a higher intensity. So that would be more of the Kegel, and that's the shortening of the pelvic floor. When you understand how to shorten it, then you can do what's called the reverse Kegel. And honestly, they should have came up with a better answer than the reverse Kegel because there's better words we could use. But the reverse Kegel is essentially the opposite of doing a Kegel. So the reverse Kegel is more of a bulging out or a pressurizing out, kind of like you're trying to pass gas, or if you're trying to increase the stream of urine, or you're trying to release your bowels.
Would
So
it also be the same thing as when you bear down to have a child? Is it the same?
exactly.
Okay.
Yep. Same idea is you're relaxing the pelvic floor and then you're pressurizing down and out.
Okay.
So for men, for example, a large part that they get to work on is releasing and relaxing the pelvic floor. Most men are overly tight asses, so they tend to have overly tight pelvic floor muscles. And if a man has an overly tight pelvic floor, this causes that tension and that tensity to increase, and they may, during intercourse, they may get to the point where that energy isn't circulated and it just kind of, releases too fast. Or it can be so tight to the point where it doesn't allow blood flow to circulate and it doesn't allow the nervous system to relax so that they can actually get an erection. So men will have that issue with the tightness and they need to focus on more of the releasing, some of the soft tissue work, stretches, mobility, where there are women that I've worked with that do have a tighter pelvic floor, and there's certain parts of the pelvic floor that can get overly tight too. But it does depend on each person's individual situation, because there may be certain parts of the pelvic floor that may be tight and you may want to release that. But if you try to release the whole thing and you just kind of throw this blanket of, I need to release, 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 then that could cause other issues. So to bring it back to the most simplest way to approach it is to begin with the first exercise of the Kegel and the reverse Kegel. If you can understand what it takes to contract that muscle, you're going to have a better understanding of what it takes to relax that muscle. And we can use that with the tactile feedback. If you're using, say, a foam roller or a tennis ball to try to release the perineum, the pelvic floor muscles, that gives you that sensation, that feedback, that pressure that teaches you what this is supposed to feel like. And then while doing that, you can breathe into your belly, deep into your pelvis. And, just because I say breathe into your balls, women, you can breathe into your ovaries, you can breathe deep down into your pelvis as well. It's also very beneficial for you. And so these are the first steps, I would say, in just getting familiar with your pelvic floor muscles and how we can start to utilize this without going off the deep end into, peak performance with the pelvic floor.
Yeah, this is something that I really didn't think about again. Like, for those of you listening, I was so ignorant to everything until my 20s. I knew a lot about some things and nothing about health. I just did not even know anything. And so and people laugh because I'm a health practitioner. I didn't even drink water till my 20s, but I really didn't know anything. And I remember maybe at the end of my 20s, after there were hectic years, high stress, just, still kind of figuring things out. And I remember there were a few years, and especially specific times, where I could not urinate. I could not pee unless I sat on the toilet. This is getting graphic. And I closed my eyes and I specifically had to focus on relax. And I would say it like that to myself, Sam, relax your body, relax. And because I was so chronically tight, my whole body was just everywhere, but, my shoulders, my body, but I could even feel it, like, in my bum. I was always squeezing at all times, and I would notice, like, "Whoa, let go, Sam." But again, chronic fight or flight and this immense tension, I couldn't even go to the bathroom regularly without having to bring myself through a self-led meditation, and that was really when I started to ask, "Okay, what is happening that my body is in such a clenched mode?" And, when I started to really dive into it, I looked at the psychological side, the biological side, the spiritual side, and I looked at my life and I realized, wow, a lot isn't flowing in my life. I'm holding a lot. There's a lot of tension, a lot of stress. There's a lot of rigidity, and I'm not the most flexible person in any sense of the word. I'm working on it, but I'm what's known as more of a rigid person, or I have been traditionally, and that showed up in my body. And that also showed up in my relationships, and it also showed up in my business, and it also showed up in the way money would not flow through me. And maybe this is like a little woo woo or spiritual or not proven at all. But when I started to really work on that and release and bring my body into a more rest and digest, parasympathetic state, I noticed, wow, I'm more flexible in my mind, in my relationships, in my body, in my business. Money is flowing through me. When we start to get into some of the feminine work and feminine optimization and how the pelvic floor, well, what's there? It's the womb. That's the creative center. That's literally where we birth life through, whether it's a human life or a business. The energy of the womb is the energy of creation. And so what do you think about that? Does that make sense, or does that sound far-fetched?
That makes so much sense. Yeah, there's a lot of jump off points I could say. And I mean, first off, yeah, energy. So without getting too woo woo, I mean, every day there's more research that's actually showing that energy moves through the body, and emotion is energy in motion in the body. And so however you want to identify it, if we have parts of the body that are blocked and we don't have energy able to move through these areas, that's where the energy is going to get blocked up. And the perfect example I use for a lot of guys is if they are tight in the pelvic floor and that doesn't circulate, that's going to end up with either of those two issues, the erectile dysfunction, the premature ejaculation. By clearing up and allowing that energy to flow, that helps them not only with bedroom activities, but that also is going to help them with maintaining their grounding if they have to have a difficult conversation, whether that's in their business or whether that's with a relationship or whether that's being able to perform physically. These aspects of being able to breathe and circulate this energy is key. And this energy, whether we call it, sexual energy, prana, there's Jing, there's different terms because all of the different traditions are aware of this energy. It's just we have different names for them. But when you open up the channels and you let this energy flow, this helps you not just with your creative endeavors, but this energy is so powerful that it literally creates life.
Mhm.
So instead of just spilling this energy and being reckless with what we're doing with this energy. And this is a big problem a lot of people have, is they give this energy away way too easily, whether it's with, relationships they shouldn't be in, or, um, graphic online content they shouldn't be consuming. They lose the sacredness of the seed of the creative energy that they can use to create and, procreate and penetrate the world, but also use this to create life, create,
Mhm.
create, not just create another life, but to create their life.
Yeah.
So by opening up that energy and being able to optimize these different aspects of just aligning your body and breathing and letting that energy move, it's like that alone. That's why I bring up my business, the Primal Prescriptions. It's because these are literally the low hanging fruit that if you just get tuned back in and synchronize yourself with nature, with your circadian rhythm, this is going to be the 20% that gets you 80% of the results in all areas of your life. So it can be really freaking simple.
So you're saying men shouldn't just pop Viagra? That's like the Viagra companies are so angry with you. How dare you teach men how to be hard and flow life force?
Yeah, how dare you do that without our drugs?
How dare you be primal? I love that you said it. So, man, there are better options that don't lead to major dysfunction in your body. And you actually have a program specifically for men. Let's plug that in right here, right now.
I
What is it?
do. I have it's called the Power Pelvis Protocol, and this helps guys to learn how to breathe, align their body, breathe into their core, their pelvic floor, and be able to harness their energy for the power of good. Because the world, it's not only is it loaded full of toxic junk, but it's spitting a certain narrative that's keeping men soft, weak. And I mean, I know there's primarily a lot of women that listen to this podcast, and I know they don't want weak, soft men. So this for guys, it's think of it like a men's health accelerator to help them build a core foundation for their posture, their breathing, their pelvic floor, and learn how to unlock their masculine potential, because this is utilizing their sexual energy as a man, your essence as a man, your energy. And when you learn how to harness this with your breath and your body, this is going to help you not just in relationships, but this is going to help you in all aspects of life. And, you last as long as you want in the bedroom is also a nice hot thing to say too. But it really puts you back in the driver's seat to be able to control your energy rather than being at the whim of all this external stuff telling us certain things or trying to get us to do certain things. It really empowers men to get back in control. And it's not just about men, but it's men so that they can show up best for their women, for their families.
I was just gonna say that as well. This is something that my husband and I talk about a lot because he is a man. He is a real man, and one of the things that he notices is the destruction, the systemic destruction of masculinity and the decline, the rapid decline of testosterone on the planet. And what happens when we have a society of weak beta estrogen dominant men? Well, it affects men, obviously, the destruction of men. And what that does for women is we become in our masculine. We have to take over. We have to provide. We have to go work. We have to lead. We have to take charge. And we can. We absolutely can, but we are not meant to. We are not meant to. Biologically, the female body is not optimal when she is hypermasculine. Look at endometriosis. Look at PCOS. Look at estrogen dominance. Look at all the cancers. Yes, I went there. I said it. Complete connection to the disconnection from our natural nature. This is what you talked about right at the beginning. And so, a big, huge solution to global health is men being in their masculine power and in being in divine partnership with women, so we can be in our divine feminine and we can birth businesses, birth the new humanity, birth actual life onto the planet. And so, this work, it really does benefit everybody. It's so important.
Yeah, and you nailed it. Is if you have weak, soft men, yeah, a woman can step up and she can become hardened and more in her masculine. But that's because she doesn't feel safe. She wants to feel safe, like she has a man that can be the mountain, that can be grounded, that she can rely on, that can actually, deal with her emotions and weather the storm if necessary. But if she doesn't see a man that can handle that, then she hardens and she becomes and takes on that role for that herself. And, and you mentioned the testosterone. I talk a lot about testosterone. I have a free testosterone course. And we look at the stats on testosterone and fertility, and it is plummeting. And a big issue that many people don't realize is that women need testosterone just as much as men. It's not just about men and testosterone. If a woman doesn't have testosterone, and you know this in the work that you do, is that there's many issues that arise when a woman doesn't have testosterone. So it seems like there's a war on testosterone out there,
Yeah.
and I see it shifting now. And ultimately, I think it's shifting for the power of good, because we look at the world and it's not men versus women. It's how does a man be the man in his best capacity, and a woman be a woman in her best capacity with what's most natural to us and what we feel most comfortable and resonant in.
Yes, and what nourishes the body in the best way. And, you know, something else that I wanna ask on this topic, because 'cause we're talking about the pelvis, we're talking about birthing. Something I'm noticing, and maybe it's just my age, I don't well, not even, I'm 36 right now as we're recording, but what I'm noticing is, like, 5 to 7 of my closest friends that are all around my age are all in the same phase of looking to get pregnant or trying to get pregnant within like, right now, I'm just fully surrounded by this wave of women that are looking to get pregnant, and myself included. I'd love to start trying within the next few months or so. What do us ladies that are looking to bring life into the world, is there anything we need to be doing now to start supporting our pelvic health to literally carry life? Is there anything that we need to do, that we need to be aware of? What can you provide for us
Great
ladies?
question. Yeah, because man, that's so key. And it's important to have your body primed if you are looking to get pregnant and if you're looking to give birth, is one, making sure that you have your body aligned. So we talk about posture and we talk about alignment, and that's going to be key. But having a strong core container. So that core container that we talked about earlier, that's really important if you're going to grow a baby in there, because that's going to be where they are for 9 months, right? So being sure that you have a strong core, that you're able to breathe, activate your core, do the right exercises, strengthening that type of stuff. But also, when it comes to the point where you are, say, pregnant and you are preparing for giving birth, is there's work that you can do on your pelvic floor to help loosen things up so that you don't end up with a tear or having issues or complications during the birthing process. So strengthening the core, being able to breathe, that's going to help you when it comes to actual birthing process, and then also the extensibility of the pelvic floor muscles as well. Something further that we didn't get into but is relevant is for training. So if you think of, a difference between men and women training, what a woman has a cycle, and that cycle, it changes how their body likes to perform. And so if we're talking about peak performance for a woman, it's going to be different. It's going to be more cyclical because there's these cycles and these seasons to the female body. So if you look at, in more of the first phase of their menstrual cycle, it's like that phase is going to be, it's going to be a little lower intensity. It's going to be a little more rest, parasympathetic oriented, versus when you're more of like mid cycle in that second and third week, that's going to be when you're going to be more likely ready to exert yourself. And so timing your training, timing your physical fitness with your cycle is really important. And this is something that I've worked with women on as well, is how to optimize your training for your cycle, for your season. And it does take tracking this stuff and really being in tune with your body. And if you're not doing these practices of awareness, of breathing, of just feeling your body, you're going to be so disconnected from those natural rhythms and those instinctual cycles that you go through. So you have to have that presence and that awareness and tuning in with your body. And when we talk about peak performance for a woman, using your cycle to your advantage. And if you're a man understanding a woman and her cycle, that can also give you an advantage as well. Different conversation. But just wanted to point it out there that
Yes.
when it comes to the cycle, it is really important for timing that properly for training and the physicality.
This is something that I teach in Optimum as well. And it's something that I'm a hardcore a person. And, I say online, if your personal trainer doesn't ask you about your cycle, fire them. You can educate them, but I would just say fire them and find a better personal trainer. And if you're a personal trainer listening to this and you're like, Sam, I don't train around the cycle. Well, the invitation for women is to train around the cycle because if you're pushing them and you're continuously pushing them harder and harder and harder, the way that they're going to show up when they're ovulating and the way that they're going to show up in their luteal phase or first day, second day of their bleed is completely different. And you need to be sensitive to that. You need to know that. Women all need to know this as well, but especially if you're a professional and your job is to guide women in the training of their body and they're placing their body and their money in your hands, it's very important for you to upgrade your knowledge so that you can best support them. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, and there's tools that you can use. Like my high end clients get an Aura ring, and
Yeah.
that great. Yeah, I know you got a version of the ring too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And, using that can be really helpful for tracking cycles too.
Yeah, I love that. The Aura ring. I have the Ultra Human ring, but you can also use like tracking apps. I have the Flow app, even just the free version. You can track these things, and then you build your schedule around that. Even the way you build your work around that, the way you build your social time, even your calories. Especially for women wanting to get pregnant, you need to be eating more than starvation mode. For so many women, especially these health conscious women, you're actually under eating, overtraining, not working with your cycle and even just within the cycle, right before your menstruation, our body needs 300 to 400 more calories a day just to be able to have a proper and healthy cycle that month. And so I love that you brought that up. And there's a couple of different things. This could be a whole other episode. But I'm glad that you mentioned that. Okay, for one last question here is for exercises for the core, what's like your top exercise? What is the one that you're like, women, you need to be doing this regardless of where you are, if you're wanting to get pregnant or not, just to strengthen the core? Is it crunches? I'm not about the crunches. Like, tell me, there has to be something better than crunches.
No, it's not the crunches. I mean, so the first thing is understanding how to actively create pressure within your core. Because it doesn't matter what exercise you do, if you're not stabilizing and creating pressure properly, you're going to be using the wrong muscles to strengthen your core. So the first way that I like to teach is to activate the transverse abdominis muscle. And it's in the name. Transverse means, around to sides. So that muscle, think of that like a muscle corset that surrounds our abdomen here, like a belt. So if you put on a belt, that muscle, that's what stabilizes the sides, the front, and the back of our core. So number one, if you take a deep breath in and then you exhale out, as you exhale out, think of pulling your belly button in. And as you do that, you might feel like there's these deeper ab muscles or these deeper structures that you're noticing contract. So it's using that pulling in of the belly button that's going to help to sort of cinch down that muscle to help keep that pressure contained. So that's key with any exercise that we're going to do that we want to target the core is being able to create that pressure by pulling the belly button in and then kind of like you're bearing down, but we don't want to be holding the breath and bearing down very hard. That's something to be aware of is not holding the breath when we do this. So when we've learned how to be able to activate that transverse abdominis with pulling the belly button in, that's where we can translate that into some of these other core exercises. So something as simple as laying on the ground flat, your back against the ground, knees bent up. Something of pulling the belly button in and then tucking your butt down. You're like a dog tucking its tail between its legs. That alone can be enough for some people to really feel that core container contracting.
Mhm.
And then from there, we just can add layers on top of that, whether we want to turn it into extending your legs out and in, kind of like you're bicycle pedaling on your back, keeping the belly button in, keeping the back flat, or whether we turn that into more of the dead bug exercise, where on your back, you extend one leg out straight while you're reaching overhead with the opposite arm. kind of
Tough.
stuff without a
For us
visual.
people with extreme limbs, I'm so lanky. I know you gave me this one, and I'm like, there's just limbs flailing. No, I control it, but it's a goodie. This is the dead bug is so good. It looks so easy. It's not, especially if you're not a compact person. It's a good one, and you have to make sure, right, that your back is flat on the floor. You're not doing this weird extension, and
Mhm. Yep,
you
keeping the back flat and like you, yeah, because you have the longer limbs, so you have a longer to extend, which means you have a longer lever arm and more torque on your joints. And for some people, as they do the dead bug, they might notice a popping or a snapping in the hip, and that's just a tendon of the front of the hip. So you can usually navigate around that by just bringing the leg out or in just a slight bit so that you don't get that repetitive snapping. It's not a problem, but if you do it continually, it can cause an issue. But the dead bug is really good because it does get some of that cross patterning movement. And if you wanted to take it a step further, you could then, flip onto your hands and your knees and you can do
bird
the bird
dog.
dog, bird
Yeah.
dog. Yeah.
There we go. Love the bird dog. Do you have videos on this anywhere? Do you on your Instagram? We're gonna plug everything in, but I think once this goes live, we need you to demonstrate some dead bug. We need you to demonstrate the thing. So I'm gonna force Cody to make content. I'm just gonna ping him, be like, "Yo, Cody, Dr. Cody, give me a dead bug today."
Yo, sick. I'm definitely down. Yeah, so I have some videos on my YouTube, some are on Instagram, but for in the Power Pelvis protocol, there's instructional videos with me demonstrating it with the voiceovers and that's the paid program for the men's accelerator. I did consider opening it up. I have a module for trainers on working with women, but I thought, if there's enough interest, I might open it up. I might change how I navigate that. But I have videos on there. I have some videos on Instagram,
Okay, perfect.
YouTube as well.
And are you taking any one-on-one clients at the time?
I'm open up for one-on-one clients.
Oh my
I'm
gosh,
doing
so lucky.
assessments.
Somebody gets to be lucky to still work with you. Get
Right?
in now because Cody's
It's
blowing up all over the place. So it won't be forever that he's gonna take one-on-one, I can tell you that.
just a couple a month, and right now it is opened up for we're still April, yeah, so April. And if you are interested in doing a dive into like blood labs, genetics, I do have an assessment. That's kind of the step into if you're not ready for the full on executive gains one-on-one offer. You can do an assessment with me and we'll take a look at your blood labs, your physical movement, your hormones, genetics, and coming up with a game plan. And then you can decide from there what's the best fit. If that's something you want to run with the game plan and do that yourself, or if you're looking for more accountability, a higher level of support that way.
Amazing, I love that. Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna link all of that below. I have some rapid fire questions. They're not really rapid fire, but we're gonna make them rapid fire. So
Go.
'cause we can go deep, but we're gonna go shorter answers with this one. But these are a little bit on the edge, a little edgy. Gotta try to poke some holes at things. Um, what do you believe about performance or success that most people would disagree with? Is there anything that's like controversial?
Yeah. So I would say that a lot of people think you need balance, and balance is a thing that you need to have balance with this. And oh, you're eating, you don't have to always eat, or you don't have to always train. I think that's all a bunch of BS. And I think there's times and there's seasons for things, but if you fully have a goal that you want to just crush it and get after, there takes a level of being a little psychotic and a little really committed to the point where if you're 100% into something, it's so much easier to be 100% committed than if you're 99% committed. So I don't fully believe in balance.
Ooh, so the hot take from Dr. Cody is that balance is BS. You heard it straight here, and I'm gonna second that. I think that there's oscillation. There's times where you're gonna be all in on your posture. There's times you're gonna be all in on your business. There's times where you're gonna be all in with your baby. But to be perfectly balanced in everything is kind of flatlined, and you don't really achieve much when you're trying to just balance everything because that's kind of mediocrity. And so balance is BS and mediocrity. That's the moral of this story. That's true.
Yeah,
That could be
balance is
triggering though.
BS.
Okay, so say you're in balance, so you're kind of like just getting by and everything, but you want to really step into this high performance or even not even high performance, but just optimum. Like you want to feel really good or you want to achieve some great results. You're saying like what's your advice there is to just go all in, really commit?
Go all in, fully commit, and also you have to have a defining time that you're going to do that for. So you're not going to just do that without an end time. It is important if you, I mean, if you do have a relationship that you're in that you want to sustain, you can't just say, I'm going to go psycho mode and do this indefinitely. It's like, no, you need to say, I'm going to do this for maybe the next 60 days, 90 days, and then I'm going to take a break, reset, recalibrate. But having seasons and having timeframes, container that you work with, that's going to be really important.
I like this a lot because on one end, you can see people online, like, the Gary V's or the Mr. Beasts or some of these people that are, I don't know who I would orient in the fitness world, but or some bodybuilders, some of these people that are just all in all the time, pedal to the metal, hardcore. And but you know that there's so many other levels of their life that is just in complete disarray. And so we're not saying to do that. We're saying there are seasons. So there are times of rest, there are times of resetting, there are times of, focusing elsewhere, but being strategic about the seasons that you're in and going all in with that, that is the key to high performance. That's what you're saying.
Exactly. Yep.
I love that.
Cycles and seasons.
Okay. So I know I kind of just tapped into it, but would you say that there are any dark sides or shadow sides of the peak performance culture?
Hmm. Yeah, one, it can be isolating. So if you're in a place where you are somebody that says the top 1% that has these goals and this extreme discipline, and you are making all of these sacrifices to get there, not many people are going to resonate with that. So you need to either find a tribe that can help to reflect that, or you just need to embrace that you're going to be the black sheep and people aren't going to get it. And it's tough to be in that space of isolation or having ambitions and goals for peak performance,
Mhm.
and to have friends of the past or family members and have them in a way talk to you about balance and telling you, oh, you need to bring in more balance, or that
Just watch some Netflix, bro.
exactly. And it's,
Have
you
some
see those people,
have some chips. Why are you being like that, Sam? Why don't you wanna eat the chemicals? Just watch some Netflix, have some chips, order
it's
a
just one,
pizza.
it's just one. What's one going to do?
Why are you being like that?
And
Well,
that's
you're
that
so upset.
1% that
Why are
if
you
you
so
do the
upset?
one, opens up the door for everything to come crashing down. That's the thing.
Mm,
So yeah, it can be isolating and it can be tough to keep going forward if you don't have anybody that's reflecting that. So if you don't have a community that's helping to reflect that version of you, it's going to be easy to give up or to feel lonely, or you're going to feel like, is this even worth it? Because
yeah.
it's very isolating and everybody else is trying to get you to succumb to,
Mhm.
the normalcy.
For sure. I mentioned I'm a hardcore person. I've always been a hardcore person, and, I remember the best advice I probably ever got, or one of the best pieces of advice, it was from my auntie, and she's like, Sam, you specifically, you need to find people who are like you." And she said that all the time when I was growing up because I kept having challenges with this and that and different relationships and just feeling like, "Oh, people don't get it. Like, why don't they wanna obsess, talk about this thing? Why don't they wanna be, like, really" like, I just didn't get why people weren't hardcore. And I remember just hearing this, "You need to find people that are like you." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah." And when I finally got it, it's just a whole different vibe. There's also a this is gonna sound I don't know how this is gonna sound, but there's a hierarchy of humanity in my mind. There's, like, the baseline NPC people, which are probably a huge majority, and there's the mediocrity levels, and there's some higher and lower levels. There's some people that are, like, doing great, but then at the top, they're just the all-in, hardcore, high achievers, maybe, like, the 5%, and at the top, there's the 1%. I'm not even saying I'm a 1%, I don't think so, but I am somebody that's hardcore, and I'm somebody that loves to nerd out on things, to geek out on things, to obsess on things, to really achieve, and I can only really be around other people like that or else I feel so unfulfilled and so unmet, and it really irks everything about me. And I finally got it. Oh, A players have to be with A players. Hardcore people need to be with other hardcore people. It's important to be surrounded by the people that just get it and that are just on the same trajectory as you. It is so freaking fulfilling.
Amen to that. Yeah. It's when you're around others that get it or even help to pull you up
Yeah.
and to hold you accountable. It's like that's radically different than being around the same people, the same friends that are, mediocre or, not that we're slumped to NPC, but
Mhm.
if we, if we if that constantly if you're the friend in the friend group that is the only that everybody else is trying to get you to compromise or to be balanced, it's like that's not going to work, and you're going to end up sacrificing yourself and you're sacrificing your standards in order to fit in. So in order to keep standards, you have to surround yourself with other people that have a similar standard and that see you and reflect that version of you.
Absolutely, and the journey of transition, and for anyone listening to this, I just sounded really elitist, yeah, I'll acknowledge that, and I'll stand by it, and I wasn't always there. I wasn't always in some form of greatness. I was a degenerate, like, for a huge majority of my life, like, just but there was a transition when I decided. I remember exactly when it was. I was, 21 years old. I was like, "I'm not gonna drink alcohol anymore. I'm not gonna party every single night till 3 AM. I'm not gonna keep doing these recreational drugs. I'm not gonna keep tattooing up my body. I'm not gonna keep dating these degenerate humans. I'm not gonna do all these things that are holding me back, and I'm gonna just get rid of everything." And I just totally shifted trajectory in my life. And for a while, it was really lonely. It was absolutely lonely. It was isolating. And I think that that's something that people fear is that isolation and that loneliness, but it's temporary. And I think it's necessary as well. There's maybe going to be a time in your life that is going to be isolating and lonely and challenging and painful and and tumultuous as you're transitioning, you're shifting your identity, you're going for something different, but it is absolutely necessary to then align with who you are meant to be, who you're becoming, who you really are. And when you're there, that's when you attract the right aligned resonant people. And so definitely do it. If you feel like you are meant for more and you know that there's a reclamation for you, absolutely. The loss is so worth it because what you gain on the other end of that, astronomical.
Mm. Yep. And it's very difficult to live in both worlds. If you are trying to level up and step it up, but you're in your hometown around the same people, it's going to be very difficult for you to take on a new identity and a new personality and to operate in a different way when everybody is used to seeing you and viewing you and putting you in this box of who you are. If you've always been the person that's 50 pounds overweight and people see you as that and eating a certain way and doing things a certain way, and all of a sudden you decide that I'm going to step it up and I'm going to lose this weight, I'm going to turn things around, it's going to be very difficult to do that because you will lose friends and you will have to do things different and get unfamiliar. And there's a period before you're fully at that new version of that you're striving to be, where you have to go through a transition of shedding the old and you're also getting familiar with the new. So it does take a level of, mental resilience and confidence and discipline to be able to push through that phase. And also, if you want that accountability and you want the support, hire a coach or get a community. And that's where I've invested into myself with coaching, with mentors, with communities in order to help myself to grow and to stay accountable because it's been very isolating a lot of the times I mean, just moving across the country a half a dozen times at this point and
Yeah.
kind of reinventing yourself every time you get somewhere and getting familiar. It's so having some sort of consistency that aligns with this higher version of you and who you're striving to become can be helpful. Because otherwise, if you don't have that compass that helps to keep you aligned with that higher version of you, it's easy to fall backwards or fall off. And it's even harder to get on track.
100%. Having a coach and a community for that accountability and direction, it's so incredibly valuable. And I think you and I have this in common where I think there is a benefit to moving a lot. I went to 2 elementary schools, 2 high schools, 2 universities, 2 colleges, just because I moved around so much. And while it's sad in a way, I see people that have had the same friends since they were 3 years old. I didn't have that, but what I had was the unattachment and the ability to consistently grow and evolve without anybody trying to hold me back. Because that is something that I see often. And it's a big diminisher for people is, what are my friends gonna say? What if everybody from high school that saw me as this party girl that would just drink all the time, and now I'm a life coach? You know, I had a client of mine that went through that situation, and she's like, "I don't know how to show up online sharing who I'm becoming when everybody knows me as who I was." And there's many different ways to do that, but one way is cut them all out. If they're not key to your life, if you don't love them and they're not where you wanna go, and they're not adding value to your life, then just cut them out, or who cares? Get new friends. Shift. You cannot downplay the importance of shifting your environment, your circumstances, your situation. Doesn't mean you have to travel to a different country, although I do recommend it at times. Just get a new group. Get get a new circle. Go to different places. Have a coach, somebody that can see you, guide you, elevate you, and put you on a different trajectory. Something has to change, and it's easier to change personally, I find, when there's also a situation or environment around you that can hold and facilitate that growth and change.
100%. And that's where some people would say gradual change can be more sustainable or it can cause better change. When I think if you change everything all at once, if you change your environment and your circle at the same time, well, now you've completely cut the cord. So it's a lot easier for you to stay consistent with this new way of operating.
Yes, that's exactly it. I'm the same, and I think it's everybody's on their own trajectory and their own path, but even when I'm helping people, especially when I'm working with somebody with chronic illness, if there's any cancer, toxicity, anything like really deep, and we start to transition them from their toxic home care and makeup and foods into non-toxic and healthy, sometimes they say, "Okay, well, I wanna start with one at a time." And other people are like, "Sam, burn it all." And I love when people say that. I'm like, "Yes, we're just gonna go in, take it all out, throw it away or donate it to somebody you don't like. Just get rid of it all and just start fresh. Buy everything new. All the foods, all the supplements, all the spices, all the makeup, all your shampoo, conditioner, and start fresh. Then let this mark a new beginning. Because if we take a year or 2 or 3 to transition, that old life has hooks, and it's, like, comfortable. It's like, "Cody, don't leave me. Come back, be comfortable, do the things, have the red food dye and the this, and let me just keep hold on you." I feel that. I feel like smallness and mediocrity, it's like a swamp, and it just wants to suck you in, because this matrix world, and this is a deep conspiracy theory we can get into, but I believe that this matrix world kind of wants to keep us sick, stressed, diseased, depressed, and stuck and small. Right? That's the system that we're in. And so there's no greater rebellion than you reclaiming yourself and your health and your purpose, your power, and accelerating into your greatness. It's a whole rebellion to the system that we're in. So,
Dude, let's go. Yeah, that's yeah. And that is, like you said, it is the ultimate rebellion. When you can be independent, you can be sovereign and be completely responsible for your health. It's like, back during the COVID time stuff, it was, how many times I got bribed to get this thing. And I decided I am so radically obsessed with my health that there's no way anybody's going to tell me what I can or cannot do to my body. What I can or cannot put into it based off legalities or any of this stuff is all just a bunch of nonsense because the system is not here to help you. It's not here to support you or to make you healthy. It's like
mm,
realizing that myself. And for a lot of people caved. And, for me, it was like, I'm going to lean into this even more because I'm so convicted in how much I've invested into my own health. So being sovereign with your health, being independent, learning this stuff, it's like how many times I've experienced working in the healthcare system for over 12 years now and seeing how much the authorities that I used to look to be the leaders or to tell me what was best, and then to see for myself of understanding how to, how I can interpret results, and how radically off some of these people are that are still looking to be their primary providers. And it's like,
yeah.
wow, it's
What's the quote? Well, 2 things here. First thing is that our body is the sacred vessel of the soul. That's my belief, that we have a soul that embodies, we have a body, this body is to carry the soul, and it is a sacred vessel, and it is imperative for us to be mindful and intentional with what we put in and on our bodies. So I love that you made that decision. I love that you leaned into that and you're just like, "No, I know what's right and what's wrong." The other thing, this is a quote from the Bible, and I'm not going to quote it properly, but it's like, we will know them by their fruits. And when I look at people, and especially I remember I grew up and I went to the hospital a lot. I went to the doctor a lot. I was sick a lot. And I remember these doctors that were all fully bald, fat, a horrible skin, or these women that looked horrendously ill, the gray skin and just broken fingernails and like just zombie like people. I remember seeing these doctors and just thinking, are these the people that are meant to be the health experts? Like, how are they morbidly obese and they look like they're dying in a chair? How is this possible with a Snickers bar on their counter? I'm like, I'm supposed to listen to these people? Yeah, like, it make sense, and it just doesn't. And you will really know how somebody cares about themselves and how their inner world works based on how their outer physique expresses. And
And that's the normal thing, right? Is you go into your doctor's office and you have your container of candy here.
I know. Or
Like,
the
what?
dentist, and then they give you a lollipop. What?
Yeah. I'm like, what? And the example, and yeah, the examples of people that I've seen that are healthcare practitioners or a physical therapist or that can't even, put together a workout program based off of basic machines at the gym. That's 1, 2, 3 like numbers in a row. Like, how how do we have such a disconnect with just the basics of health, and then we depend on these people to be the so-called professionals because they've passed exams by a governing body that isn't prioritizing your health in the first place or have good metrics to measure health by?
Well, yeah, this is another thing. I just got into an argument yesterday, or this woman started an argument with me. She's a psychotherapist, and she was fighting me because I will not accept that a biological man can become a biological woman, can become a woman. And this is a psychotherapist doing her master's or PhD. And I'm like, we live in a clown world. We live in a clown world. And no wonder people are so sick, stressed, diseased, depressed, because it's confusing. And many good, intentional people are trying to be healthy. They're trying to do the right thing. They're trying to eat well. They're trying to exercise. They're trying to figure it out. But the mass confusion, because of all of the conflicting information and the horrendous information that's out there, it is no wonder that people are so confused. And so, I think for anyone listening, it's really important to be like a private investigator when you are going to follow someone online, or you're going to hire them, you're going to put your health in their hands. Question the shit out of them. And beyond that, look at them. Look at them. If they are obese trying to sell you something health related, don't do it. Like, if they don't look the part and act the part, and they don't have the testimonials and they don't have the proof, just because they have a PhD in this, or a million followers in that, there's so much misinformation out there. And I think it's really important to do your due diligence before trusting the authorities when it comes to your temple, which is really what you have on this planet.
Yeah, looking at the people, you want to find somebody that is the example of health, of what you want to be or what you're striving for. If you are going to a doctor that's 150 pounds overweight, it's like, what are they going to tell you, or what are they going to teach you about health? And
Yeah.
it is unfortunate that the system is so broken that the definitions of which is basically what a man and a woman, like, I saw your Instagram on that a couple of days ago. I thought, okay, I'm
I had to
so
draw
glad
the diagram of
she
like the
drew it on
differences.
whiteboard. Yeah, but it's so necessary because it seems so dumb and it seems so silly, but yet people have been brainwashed to this point that there's such confusion that you can have a so-called biological woman become a biological man is just impossible. And to try to write off the differences between the two sexes and to try to make this androgynous confusing zone, all it does is cause mental health issues, and it causes this disconnection from what's even real. And then, again, it's very complex, and it's not the fault of any of your listeners or anybody that's out there trying to do better. It's tough because we have to try to disseminate through this information, and to keep it as simple as possible, that's why I wrote my book, the How to Live a Long and Healthy Life Through Eating, Moving, and Sleeping, and just mastering the basics of what it means to eat in alignment with nature, sleep in alignment with nature, and get out and move in alignment with nature, just how you would if you were living in nature. If you were going to craft your natural habitat that would be optimal for a human, how would you do that? You would have the right kind of light, you would have good quality water, food, you would be synced up with the light changes of your environment. That's how we need to be operating. And there's no pills, procedures, anything else that we can do to replace that, because you cannot. It's like with these toxic things like phthalates, BPA's, plastics. It's you cannot outwork or you cannot out eat or out sleep putting these products in your body. You cannot do anything but eliminate these products. And the environment is constantly pumping these things into us. So instead of looking for roundabout solutions on what we can do to, I can't sleep, or I can't, get this kind of food or diet, or I can't train. Well, there's no pill or procedure that can fix that. So you do need to commit to mastering the foundation. And you don't need all the information online. You don't need all these other things to tell you what to do. You just get so present with yourself and your awareness, and you can feel into, and again, it sounds woo as soon as I say the word feel, but tap into yourself and your body and what feels right in terms of what's going to nourish you. Or if you're tired, get your eyes off of a screen, stop scrolling, and go to bed. It's like remove all of these external stimuli and these environmental things telling you what you need to do, and instead go inward and notice in your body and listen to these signals that are instinctual, and these are embedded, these are deeply embedded into your body and your brain and your nervous system. So getting away from all the nonsense, starting to listen to your own body again, and these are the answers that you're going to get. It doesn't have to be complex, it doesn't have to be complicated, it can be very simple.
So well said. And it's that full circle to the thing you said right at the beginning of this conversation is the disconnection from our true nature. Come back. Like let's tune out all the things, all the lights, all the plastics, all the chemicals, all the let's just come back to nature, to our natural essence, and relearn what truly nourishes the human body, the human mind, the soul, and what truly makes us optimum. So thank you so much for sharing that. I want to ask you something. I've decided I'm gonna ask everyone I talk to. Okay. So you have the opportunity to have a microphone and speak to the entire planet. And it's like a 2 to 3 minute speech, or maybe 1 minute, whatever you want, whatever it is. But imagining that their hearts are fully open and their minds are fully receptive. Like you get to program humanity. You have this microphone. What do you say?
Hmm. It'd probably be piggybacking off of what I just said. It was the solution to so many of the problems that we experience is in ourselves, and it's connecting with our primal roots, our primal human nature, which is what our DNA is programmed to respond to. Going outside, getting sunlight, moving your body, getting nourishing food, food that your grandmother would recognize as food, not store-bought processed cereals and things like that. Going out and doing these things in nature and living a rewarding life with a good community, positive mindset, drinking tons of water, quality water without chemicals, doing these foundational aspects of getting the basics. And I like to look at it as look at nature as a vitamin N, we could call it. And you could look at it as four core components. We have the elements of fire, which can be the light, that can be the sun, that can be heat. We have the earth element, which is our land, our food, our soil. We have the water element, which is our rivers, our water, our blood in our body. And we have the air element, the air quality, what we breathe. So getting sufficient dosages, not just in quantity of these elements, but also the quality, making sure that you're drinking quality air. You have quality or drinking quality water, have quality air. You're eating quality foods, you're getting sleep, you're managing your light exposure. And when I say light exposure, it's managing that in regards to the natural circadian rhythm, the sleep and the wakeful cycle. So when the sun comes up, light should be on, you should be moving. When the sun goes down, dim the lights in your house, close the curtains. So syncing up all of these aspects of the four elements and how that shows up in our day to day, in our home environments. And then also optimizing those so that helps to support all these holistic aspects of health, which is our mental health, our physical health, our emotional health, our spiritual health. So looking through life as this pathway of optimizing our natural connection with the earth where we've come from. We cannot exist. If we took humans off of the planet and we put us in space, it wouldn't last very long, guys. So we need to use what our DNA responds to and what we're programmed to do and align that optimally. And perfect case in point, I did my genetic testing. You're aware of this, right, Samantha?
Yeah, I
And
did my genetics, posted
yeah.
all of it, and yeah.
Yeah, and it's like finding, I was over recently in the Alps where I realized that the majority of my DNA is from, and realizing that how much at home and how much that input affects my DNA based off of what my body responds to most is powerful. And to realize that if you have genes that are closer to the equator, for example, well, your body's going to respond a certain way to certain things. So based off of your biology, your genetics, your DNA, you can optimize these aspects of nature. But at the end of the day, we're all humans and we need the eating, we need the moving, we need the sleeping. So we might as well do this well if we want to be feeling well and live a long and healthy life. So that's what I would say is just can be so simple. It doesn't have to be complex, but it does start with nature and there's no way around it. We can't supplement nature with pills, procedures. And yeah, we can use biohacks in some cases, but again, you cannot beat the real thing.
Hmm. I hope everybody really heard that and takes the potency of it because it's easy to think, oh, yeah, it's just the nature and eating. Of course, I know those things. But when you really audit, are you really doing those things? Because it's not about knowing. You listening to our fabulous, amazing, very wonderful friend Cody doesn't actually empower you unless you implement these things that he's saying. Knowledge is not power unless embodied and implemented, and it's actually a practice. And so maybe the invitation here for anyone listening is think about all of those things that Cody just mentioned, all of the foundations, all of the basics, all of the nature, the food, the movement, the exercise. I'm going to also add in the love because that's very important. Community, what and make yourself a plan. Like how can I add these things into my life? Because your life right now, if you're living a modern life, it's probably not hyper optimized with the rhythms of nature and that's okay. You're in the modern world, but we can't just make that excuse. We have to actually take this wonderful wisdom that Cody has graced us with and actually implement it into our lives. Okay? Okay. Pinky swear, we pinky swear. Great. So, Cody, as our time is dwindling into the last moments, is there anything that we missed? Is there anything that you wish you could have shared?
There's more I think we're gonna have to do around two. We could have gone deeper down some holes, and there was some jumping off points, but I
Yeah.
save them. But no, I really appreciate you bringing me in here and love the conversation. And I always enjoy talking with you, Samantha, because it's like you're also, you're a leader, you're a coach, you're a perfect example of how to operate at peak performance. And I love what you do and what you put out. So I appreciate you. And anybody that's listening from my audience, women, check out Samantha's stuff for sure. She's dialed in. So appreciate you, Samantha.
Oh, I appreciate you so much too. And where can people find you? Where's the best way to connect with you, find your work, dive deeper? All that.
Best place would be on Instagram, Cody.Crockett would be my Instagram handle. And then I got links to all my stuff there. You
Perfect.
can
I'll
find
link
that
that.
or CodyCrockett.com also works as well.
Perfect. All right, I will definitely do that. And I for anyone listening, if there are more questions, please, like, write them in the comments, let us know. We definitely have to have Cody on again because there's just not enough hours to go into all the things that I would wanna go into, like throwing out your Viagra and plastic underwear. Right? We have to go into that at some point. We have to dive into all of the things. So please let us know if you have any questions. If you want to go deeper, definitely connect with Cody. And thank you for being here. And Cody, thank you so much for your time, for your energy, for your expertise. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Samantha. Appreciate you.